Mini episode 1212 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.com.
The FDH Lounge. You'll want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hello everyone, welcome to FDH Lounge mini episode 1212. This is FDH managing partner Rick Morris here, and we've got our good friend of ours, longtime FDH Lounge dignitary, and our MMA editor Jake Digman on with us to talk about WrestleMania 36 in the empty arena, which that's what makes this part 5 in our FDH Lounge Coronavirus Crisis 2020 series. We said that we weren't going to be just looking at the specific parts of it, but how it impacts a lot of different things of life, and a rite of springtime is WrestleMania, and because of the coronavirus crisis, we end up having the empty arena / theatrical productions WrestleMania. I think you'd have to call it both right now. Some things that, again, that maybe we expected to see in some ways, as far as some of the matches certainly being a lot less exciting without a crowd. I think almost every match you could say that about. A couple of the theatrical things we really didn't know what to expect, and one match that I don't know Jake's thoughts on this, but I thought was one of the most gigantic disappointments in recent wrestling history. We'll get to all of that. As I say, my good friend, FDH Lounge dignitary, and our MMA editor, Jake Digman. Always a pleasure to have him on to talk the pro-graps. Jake, how you holding up in lockdown, my friend? Hopefully okay.
What, lockdown? I lost my job like a couple weeks ago, so I just figured I'm not going to go out of the house.
Good time.
I'm doing well. Thanks, Rich. Holding up well. Was kind of talking to you off there before we went on the air. Luckily for me, I kind of enjoyed being on lockdown before all this happened, because I kind of built my own little man cave here, so I'm doing just fine.
I've been to your place.
That's a whole other story.
Yes, I've been to your place in America's Rubber City, or former Rubber City, I guess you would say, Akron, Ohio, and you have a truly, truly excellent man cave that is basically the entirety of your place. Your entire place is a man cave, and it is really sweet, and we should sell tickets for admission, quite frankly, because it's a lot of fun. That's where I watched the Royal Rumble with you a couple months ago, and we started to anticipate what was going to be coming for this show, and, you know, I guess I like to take the segues where I can find them. I'll just jump in hot on this one here. One of the most emotional moments in recent wrestling history, the surprise return of Edge in the Royal Rumble and the tremendous showing that he had there, and very good build-up for his feud with Randy Orton, but I'm always, at the end of the day, wary of anything with Randy Orton, because he, to me, is the epitome of the whole, is not nearly the sum of the parts. People talk about how smooth he is and all the things, well, but he never adds up to a guy who has interesting matches to me, or is interesting, and I can't necessarily blame it on him. They made a creative decision to go long, but I think it was the second longest match in WrestleMania history, behind only the 1-hour Iron Man match between Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 12 and 96. I thought a horrible decision to go as long as they did, redo some of the same spots. By the way, working a tasteless allusion to Chris Benoit by doing the hanging spot there in the gym that they did on the weight machine. So, I mean, it checked all the boxes I felt like you could have checked for something that would be horrifically disappointing. Do you agree, or are you one of the rare people out there that actually thought it was pretty good?
There's a couple of things on that. I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
It was way too long. It was way too long. I was in a group chat with my friends and I. We had a whole my wrestling group buddies. You've met them all before. We were in our we each have our usual WrestleMania party, so we kind of do it online.
Mm-hmm.
Also, they're commenting like, "Why won't this just end?"
Yeah.
That's what we're like. We almost felt really sorry for Edge. Like the thing is, I liked about the match, the opening to the match. If they would have done that in front of 80,000 people or whatever, and I was supposed to be one of them, lot of other people were. If they were, if you did that, the opening to the match where Edge is looking out and he's ready to take on Orton, and then all of a sudden Orton jumps up from behind us and the cameraman and RKO's him, that would have gone over huge.
Yeah.
That place would have erupted for that. That would have been a great moment. It would have set things off, and everything with that would have been, that match needed the drama of the crowd. You needed the crowd to get behind Edge. Can you get back up? You do a spot where Orton steps on the freaking the chair with the Pillman spot.
Right.
So at what point can you keep getting up? Can you keep getting up? Can you keep getting up? And then that's you were into the ending of it with the same finish, but it was just like, good God. And then on the other thing you just brought up on the Chris Benoit thing, I'm like, they're not gonna do it. They're not gonna do it. I'm like, oh my God, all of it, like myself, church, 4-3 people with all of it is all caps, and that's basically like Benoit. Who thought that was a good idea?
I know.
Really? Who looked at that and went, yeah, it's been enough time. You know what? Maybe we can mimic one of the worst moments in the history of this industry and, quite frankly, in all of the sports.
Yeah. I mean,
Like how?
please tell me when that happened, that your buddy Mike Church, who I love, and I love needling him when I see him about how much he hates cruiserweight wrestling. Please tell me he worked in a good Vanilla Midgets reference when that happened.
I wish I did. I was too in shock from what I was just seeing.
Well,
And you have to know they only did that for shock value, because if you know, you know, and if you don't, you don't.
yeah, and that was, again, who could have possibly thought that was a good idea? Well, and not only that, I mean, Edge, I remember at the time of the tragedy, being a fellow Canadian, I think he had talked about how Benoit had taken him under his wing, so it's like, Edge is one of the last guys that you would have thought would have co-signed on something like that. I mean, and that's where, I thought it was kind of disappointing in that regard. Randy Orton, I don't know if he's ever been known for his good judgment, so I'll give him a pass, oddly enough. But for Edge, I guess I was a little bit surprised. It was one of these things, too, where, and I commented a little bit on Facebook. My good friend, Fran Stuckberry, runs a page called Gridiron Access, and for one night he was doing some wrestling coverage on there as well and seeing what people thought of stuff. And the one thing I commented on with that match, and I think it was while it was still going on, was, I understand it's the empty arena WrestleMania. They're holding it at the Performance Center, but nothing says the grandest stage of them all like doing a brawl in a conference room. Like, tell me that didn't just completely demystify the whole thing, Jake Digman. What are they going to do, swing printer toner at each other next? Come on.
Okay, so at this point, I've lost all interest.
Uh-huh.
Because they're just wandering around aimlessly. So I'm watching this movie, I'm going, why is there fencing mesh on the top of this roof, on the top of the ceiling, in an office conference room?
Yeah.
What, is this some kind of industrial design technique that I don't know about? Or did they just put that up there just for the specific purposes of having him hang off of it for no reason?
Right. There was that. I was texting back and forth. My friends, FDH Lounge dignitaries, Ron Glassnap and Dave Adams, who I used to do the old reality check show with back way eons ago at the old Sports Talk Network. So we were kind of texting back and forth because Dave had just picked up the WWE Network again. He is a lapsed fan from long ago. Ron is like me and you. He's a guy who stays up on things. So it was interesting with the different perspectives. But as they're panning backstage, I distinctly remember Dave at one point asking if the WWE had gotten product placement money from Cintas, because I think they have to zoom in on something for that. I mean, that's how ridiculous this was, Jake. We're left to ponder these questions instead of the gravity of what is supposed to be this huge grudge match.
You have to feel so bad for Edge.
Yeah.
That would have been one of those, mania moments, highlight things forever. And, now it is what it is. It's just like, dude, I just wish you would have stayed home.
Yeah, and instead, it's like Dwight Schrute and Andy Bernard brawling in a conference room. I mean, that's basically what that part of it was like. And then they're backstage and they're doing their other overlong stuff. They finish it on top of a truck for no apparent reason. It's not like either one of them went flying from there. And not that I'm advocating that, but again, sort of like you're teasing it if you're going to get up there. So just, I thought, a brutally, brutally disappointing match. And, in a way here, and again, I realize I'm going to jump around on what I'm asking you. I'm just going to try and keep it in a good flow from subject to subject.
Something real quick, though,
Yeah, go ahead.
On that match?
Yeah.
Like should the Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa.
Oh, they did a better version.
But it was a heck of a lot better than Edge and Orton was.
It was, and there's no reason.
Things like that, you know, I don't rip up the ring. Make it make it seem like there felt like a blood feud to me. This just felt like two guys running around.
Yeah, but you know what though? But that's the difference, because and not to get too markish about the differences between NXT and the quote unquote main product, but the way NXT did it, that's pro wrestling. This was the sports entertainment brawl, Jake Digman. This is you gotta go here, gotta go there, gotta make it colorful for the casuals. Oh, you know, that kind of stuff. I mean, this was a sports entertainment quote unquote brawl, and it's just indicative. The larger question I was going to ask you here was, I thought that night 2 was weaker than night 1. I was more into night 1 than night 2, and this match to me was sort of emblematic of this. This match was one of the calling cards of night 2, so it's not surprising that I would feel that way. But which did you basically have a preference for?
I would have to say probably night 1.
Okay.
Also.
Okay. Yeah, I think a lot of people did. This was a thing where there were some matches on night 2 that I thought were just throwaway matches. The women's SmackDown match, who gives a crap? I really wasn't.
Wait,
Well,
thinking about that.
Bailey did because, and look, it makes sense from a booking perspective. Well, look, I mean, and that's the whole thing about doing WrestleMania this year, right? This is the WrestleMania where you're almost wasting this stage to do a big angle. So you couldn't do the Bailey-Sasha breakup here. That's just something to continue to tease, but then that just reminds us, well, they've teased it for about 2 years now. So they did the right thing, not pulling the trigger, but it just made the whole thing seem meaningless. The Street Profits Raw tag team match, I mean, those guys are okay. I like their gimmick. I like their gimmick a little better than I like their work, and just, you know, they don't really treat the tag team titles on either show like they mean very much, so why should I be that invested in what they're doing? Aleister Black. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
So, here's what I'm commenting on the tag team title match. So, going back to our group chat.
Mm-hmm.
So, when Austin Theory and April Garza comes out, the whole group chat, who the heck are these guys?
Yeah.
And I'm like, they didn't have one tag team on the roster that was in the state of Florida that did not have coronavirus. Not one. Like, there were 2 actual guys that we knew of. They had to, like, I mean, no offense to Austin Theory, but it's WrestleMania, and no offense to Angel Garza. No one knows who they are. It's like, if you're just going to do that, just don't do it.
Right.
Just leave it off the show. It's like, I should go out, and, you know, again, this is one of the things I harp on AEW about. I like it, but the thing I don't like is when they just do wrestling for the sake of wrestling. I like the story aspect. That's what keeps me invested. I don't want a lot of people just doing moves.
Right. And
there was no story. The only story build up to that was because I guess the moment was they had to have Selena Vega in order to do the debut for Bianca Belair. The only reason I can think of why that match existed.
I think so. I think that's basically it. And you look at it in Austin Theory, the dirt sheets are saying apparently that Paul Heyman sees something in him. And I don't necessarily deny that might be the case, that there might be something there. But even character-wise, he strikes me as being kind of raw. I don't see much there that's, you know, beyond being.
I don't even know what his character is. This is the first time I ever saw him.
I mean, well, he's been on NXT a little bit recently. I mean, young, cocky guy. It's sort of a carryover from Evolve, where he was the longtime champion and nobody's better than me, yada, yada, yada. But that, to me, that's like a generic kind of character thing. Young, cocky guy, whatever. And he shows me a little bit of something as far as potential charisma, but he doesn't show me anything yet as far as reaching through the screen and grabbing me. If anybody can bring it out of him, it'd be Paul Heyman. So, I mean, maybe that can happen at some point. But, I mean, it's...
So his gimmick is every indie champion ever?
Essentially, yes. I mean, and like... Okay. A better version than most of them, just to be kind. But yes, essentially that's what it is. And Garza's just doing the, cocky, young, good-looking Hispanic guy, which, I mean, what? It was like the thing Kid Romeo was doing 20 years ago when he was WCW Cruiserweight Tag Team Champion. So, again, not exactly. I'm oddly fixated.
Who was his tag team partner?
That would be Elix Skipper / the Pope / whatever else he's been over a period of time. D'Angelo De Niro. Yeah. So I'm actually oddly fixated on what could have happened with the end of WCW and whatever. I play through these things, in my head from time to time. So Kid Romeo is somebody that I've probably thought more about than most wrestling fans over the last 20 years, just because of the part of the scene he was a part of when WCW hit the iceberg. But, when you talk about guys that Paul Heyman supposedly sees something in, night 2, Aleister Black in a throwaway match with Lashley, and at least Aleister Black went over, although it reminds you again that with Lashley, how, and that was a thing where, again, I wasn't that psyched when they re-signed him in the first place, but you look at it like, oh, well, at least he comes in with the MMA cachet. You can get some big money matches between him and Brock, whatever. No, he's just sort of plummeted right down the food chain to where he's doing a throwaway job for Aleister Black the same way he did a throwaway job for Finn Balor last year at WrestleMania that nobody remembers outside of me and you. Aleister Black supposedly was the other finalist in the mind of Paul Heyman to win the Royal Rumble and go on to face Brock Lesnar and win the championship on Raw. So, I mean, that shows you what kind of a thin line it is from being a main eventer on, at the end of this show to a throwaway win over Bobby Lashley, a guy that doesn't even really mean anything anymore, which is kind of criminal given how much they've pumped him up over the years in this match here. It was pretty decent. Aleister Black, I think, is pretty much incapable of having bad matches, and if you can have a decent one with Lashley, then you are incapable of having bad matches. But, it meant nothing.
Yeah, I'm just kind of shocked that Aleister Black was one of the top 2 choices to win the Rumble face Brock, only because he didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Like, my girlfriend watches with me, and she's, I will say, casual fan, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's like, why doesn't he do anything? He just sits there. It's like, I will now pick a fight. You will fight me. I'm like, I was in NXT as a fan.
Well, I will tell you this, Jake.
He does the same thing every single. To me, right now, he is smiling Finn Balor.
Yes, that's true. I mean, and
so it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Honestly, I can't even say if I watched this match. I thought disinterested in maybe in both characters.
Well,
the only thing I thought of is, like, if they would have done Mania, like, outside, or even if they would have done, the only thing that made me remotely interested was the concept and idea if they would have done the club with The Undertaker, Kane, and Aleister Black. That would have interested me.
Well, I will tell you this, though. Casual fan or no, I'm going to put over your girlfriend for, during the Rumble, being very enthused for when Keith Lee was out there. I'm going to give it up for anybody who pops for Keith Lee the way that I do and that you do. Yes, exactly. So the three of us are bonded in our Keith Lee fandom, along with a lot of other people out there. I mean, who the hell doesn't know Keith Lee's awesome? But it's still just cool to see that, especially out of a casual fan, to see them pop for a guy like him, because he is unique. You talk about somebody that comes through the screen and grabs you in a way that Austin Theory doesn't, Keith Lee does, and arguably should have been on this show.
You know what? That Keith Lee is money.
Yes.
It's one of those things where there's money to be made in a Keith Lee Brock Lesnar match.
Yes.
Just like there was at one point in time. Well, I was going to have, we pitched the idea that they could have said, well, actually made against Brock at SummerSlam, even if not for the title.
Yeah.
Just to have that thing. And then they could have made their new Brock, and they never did it. He just became a guy.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to bring...
He became a terrible guy, too. They made him a terrible, horrible soap opera actor.
Well, yeah.
That's what I want to see.
Yeah, well, exactly. And, like, he was never a great worker back in the day, which to me almost kind of sets him apart, because most of the guys that were great amateur wrestlers have transitioned very well to pro wrestling, whether it be Brock Lesnar, whether it be Kurt Angle, which, I tell you what, everybody craps on me when I say this, but I've never seen Jake Hager / Jack Swagger have too many bad matches. I mean, he's a guy who moves around good. He's athletic for his size. I mean, Bobby Lashley's not even at that level. It's really kind of disappointing. I'm sure he wasn't as muscle-bound when he was an amateur wrestler, and maybe that hurts him in a way, but, his output as a pro wrestler in my estimation, not great. And for a guy that got the Donald Trump rub at WrestleMania in 2007 to never even get a Brock Lesnar match when they bring him back, I don't understand that.
Yeah, I don't. But anyway, moving on.
Yes, moving on from yeah. Other things, night 2. You had the Otis match there, which again, trying to recreate, I guess, Randy and Liz for the 21st century, as I've seen it postulated in some corners. But at the end of the day, it's still a guy who moves and works the way that Otis does. Against a criminally wasted guy on the other end of the ring in Dolph Ziggler. So, I mean, I don't know how anybody was that invested even in the storyline of that one, but whatever. So, were you? Okay, all right. Maybe I'm too jaded.
Our group chat and I were discussing how this was probably one of, if not the best built matches during all of this quarantine crap for this show. Well, his numbers kind of there. This one they actually kept stories that weren't good, but at least they were building to something, and they actually did a payoff for once, and it wasn't like, they were all thrown together in a 6-man tag or some stupid crap to get everybody on the show. They actually paid off the storyline that's been going on for months, and we're like, no, right guy won.
One of the best built matches of WrestleMania 36, truly the taller than Mickey Rooney award, Jake Digman. I mean, if we're going to go... Okay, yeah, if we're going to put him over for that,
As far as being a wrestling fan.
Yes, exactly.
They built up the story and they paid it off.
They did.
How many times did they just not pay it off, or they pay it off wrong? They built it up, and the right guy won, and he got the girl.
They did indeed.
They're not going to set any Wrestling Observer Awards. They didn't do anything. It was just fun pro wrestling. It was just fun pro wrestling.
Right, exactly.
I got 1 star in the Observer, and honestly, we don't care.
Well, on the subject of star ratings, let's go to 2 that had my highest ones, at least as far as pure wrestling matches go. That would be, I gave 4 stars to Rhea and Charlotte in the opener on Sunday night, and then on Saturday night, Becky and Shayna. I gave that 3.5 stars. I'm lumping them together because there's a lot of similarities. You have the established star against the young up-and-comer that they had a chance to build. From a character standpoint, the Baszler and Becky match really kind of grabbed me because it's the cage fighter against the proto Stone Cold, tough guy, never back down kind of a thing. So from that perspective, it had me gripped. The match on Sunday night, which I thought was even better, Rhea and Charlotte, this is one where I told you off air I had a really kind of bonkers comparison. But as far as big, and in this sense I predominantly mean tall. They're 2 of the tallest ones on the roster, but that basically means big because you don't have hardly any Nia Jax types right now. Basically, everybody is relatively lean for their size, but the big ones can throw the bombs. And that one, to me, that was like if we ever got to see Walter versus Vader. Like, they're big girls hitting high-impact moves, and I was enjoying it. It was just really exciting to watch because both of them can deliver offense that makes you just go, oh, holy crap, she killed her with that one. And it was just cool to see them trading bombs the whole way. You got to like a big hoss fight. I don't know that I've ever described a women's match as being a hoss fight, but now I've seen one and I liked it. I was thoroughly sports entertained. To me, that was the best match of the weekend. But in both cases, and we talked about this off air, I didn't like the outcome because I felt like in both cases you needed to put over the emerging star. You needed to put over the up-and-comer. In the case of Becky, she's reigned on top for a year on Raw. We were all waiting for Shayna Baszler because it's like, okay, this is the one. And they didn't really tie in the Ronda Rousey stuff as much as I thought they would. I thought there maybe even should have been a little bit of, you ripped off my friend a year ago, I'm going to be the one to take the title from you. But nevertheless, it was a good build between them. And then Rhea and Charlotte, the build was kind of like, okay, I guess we got to do something with Charlotte. We got to put her in a title match somewhere. We'll make it NXT. And well, since we're now calling the NXT titles world titles, apparently because they're on USA, it makes sense in that way. But Rhea Ripley, as big of an up-and-coming star, a breakthrough star as she's been over the last year, I felt like she needed to go over rather than be somebody who just came up short. So I know you're not completely in my way of thinking on these 2 outcomes.
No, I'm not. Yes and no. I agree. Actually, Yeah, yes and no on that.
Okay.
I never thought of the comparison. First of all, thank you for making me realize now that I want to see Walter versus Vader. That's something I didn't realize I wanted until right now, and now that sounds amazing.
That's right.
Can we put in Japan?
Yeah.
Yeah. Put that
Well,
Japan, oh my God, that's huge. You take my money.
You know what? You know what, Jake? There was Vader versus Hansen. That's about as close as we're going to come. We'll both have to go look that up after we're done recording.
Yeah, that was a fun hoss battle. That was the epic hoss battle.
That's
but
right.
Anyway, I actually, starting off with the Charlotte Flair and the Rhea Ripley, I actually thought it was the right outcome for a couple of reasons.
Okay.
The way that Rhea Ripley, the way that the story of the match is what made me really like the outcome is how they showed Charlotte as being the veteran that is outsmarting the rookie that has these different moves, and the way that she tripped her leg up on the ropes, I believe it was, and she hit her knee. It looked like she legitimately tweaked her knee. Whether she did or not, I don't know. But and the way the style, the way they worked it, and with Charlotte Flair going over, and with Rhea Ripley having, she's got at the end of it, she just succumbed to the better wrestler, and in making the star is coming through. Well, now you've got, in the perfect world when we're all out of the elimination chamber here. It comes back to where I told you off air. The money is in the chase on this one, and you bring in a big level star. WrestleMania main eventer is now on the NXT brand, which brings in a whole new level of credibility to that women's division. While that brand is going head to head against AEW on TNT, which women's division is just a pile of dog crap, to be honest. It's terrible. So it gives you a reason to want to watch that and to see it. And, you bring in the main title with that, and you give the girls a chance, kind of like it's similar of the Asuka or the Shayna storyline, where the girls come in and they get their chance, and I think Io Shirai's the next one, comes up short until it gets back to Rhea Ripley, who has to work her way back up, and then she just dethrones Charlotte. You can do it in if it was in the real world where we could do things actually. I mean, I could do like a 3-month story arc for this that pays off at like SummerSlam, and for her to get her title back, and for her to get with the big one and cement herself as the woman and the 2-time NXT Women's Champion and all that stuff. And I want you to do Charlotte Flair after that. Like somebody attack her or do institute or something. But that was just kind of like, when that happened, I was actually applauding. I was like, good, right person went over on that one. It's just in my mindset. Now on the other match, loved it until the finish. That match, in my opinion, should have went perfectly great. It should have been, she should have just choked her out, and that was it. At the end of it. Not the stupid Roddy Piper WrestleMania 8 finish. And as soon as that match
Do you quit?
The WWE still doesn't like to make stars.
Oh, you know what? Never mind. I was thinking of when Roddy was refereeing the Brett and Backlund match with "Do you quit? Do you quit?" But okay, I know what you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah. So you're where he slipped on the banana peel with the whole thing. Well, that's the one that they repurposed that for Brett and Austin at Survivor Series '96. So it's a thing where
it's such an overplayed finish. I hate it. Where it's like every single time someone has a submission, they just use that. It's like you would think that the person who's doing the choke would and like the story the stupid story which makes Shayna look like an idiot where she's like, oh, I had the submission in. You've been wrestling for 3 years. You know how this works. You just make her look like a fool. And I'm just like, great. Literally, you made her look like a fool, and you don't like to make fun. You could a badass killer. She should have just came in and just destroyed her. Like, if it was from a crowd that held, I'd be like, oh my god. Then you'd have a new star made. And then, again, the money goes back in the chase. But, I don't know.
I mean, the odd thing is, although I wanted Shayna to go over because I felt like Becky needed freshening up, Shayna needed to be made on that scale, etc. I will say this. I have less qualms about Shayna right now than I do Rhea Ripley, because Shayna, that promo afterwards was just money about the agony of defeat. You're going to feel the agony of my defeat. Like, Shayna still, they did the banana peel finish, and while I agree with you that I would have rather seen her go over, the banana peel finish, I should say, protects her, I feel like. Like, I don't think it makes her look like as big of an idiot as you think it does. And I think it just sort of allows, from her perspective, for her to portray it like it was a fluke what Becky did, and makes you want to see it again. Because surely there's going to be more sneak attacks of Becky as we go along and things like that. So I am less concerned about her ability to weather this defeat than I am Rhea Ripley's. I don't know how Rhea is going to be portrayed coming out of this. And then you come to find out subsequently that she may be having visa problems and could be out of the mix for a while. Hopefully that's not the case.
I mean, hopefully it's not, but at the same time, it could be a blessing in disguise. How can I miss you if you don't go away?
True.
And, you know, big return pop, and you can make it like, you know, give Charlotte a little run, you know, if that's possible. Again, I'm taping, so we're getting all that stuff. But,
yeah.
You know, in an idealistic world, you know, give her a little bit of run. And, you know, Shayna will be fine. She will be absolutely fine out of this. I think there's just maybe the fan in me that's ticked off, that it just wasn't, you know, it's like, you know, you can't even. And I guess that's just, you know, this WWE hates someone being undefeated. But you just have to murder the entire other women's division members in the Elimination Chamber.
Right.
And then you just make her look like everybody else.
Right.
And I hate when they do that. It's the whole thing where, like, you know, they've done this continuously, where it's just like, somebody comes in, nope, we got to make you an average guy like everyone else. AJ Styles came in, had to make sure he lost his first match.
Right.
Every single time somebody comes in, no matter what, it's like, and it's just stupid. It's like, no. You know, the only one they didn't do that with was Ronda Rousey.
That's right. Well, I mean, they couldn't afford to in her case, the way that they were pumping that up. But, well, that's like, I saw a thing where Taz gave an interview to somebody the other day where he said he knew he was screwed at Royal Rumble 2000 when it blew the roof off the garden, because he knew and they knew that they didn't make him. And they're not going to push you if they didn't make you. So he figured he was screwed as soon as that happened, and he was right.
Which is, I mean, again, it's just I don't know. I mean, I'm glad there's other things like wrestling entertainment that I watch.
Yeah.
Especially now, because this is just abysmal. Like, I don't watch any WWE product.
Yeah.
Like, WrestleMania was the last show that I watched, and I watched the Johnny Gargano matches because I saw what it was, and I was like, I want to watch that.
Right. Well, I can't blame you for that. I don't watch it nearly as much either these days. So that said, let's just gloss over some of the undercard matches here as well. In night one, I'm going to double back on the ones we haven't talked about in night two, because some of these are kind of bookends. I feel like the world title matches on those shows are bookends. The theatrical matches are sort of bookends, and it's interesting to compare to each other. But let's just go through the stuff that doesn't mean anything, which is the majority of the card. The Kabuki Warriors match, I thought it was pretty decent for what it was, but it was like one of these matches that really, and maybe it was the tone setter for me on night one, because it was the first WrestleMania match in an empty arena, but I was like, man, does this match need a crowd? Like, it would be so much better if it had a crowd, and, you know, yeah, it gives you more of the stuff of, you know, that ultimately, you know, it is a great setting whenever you get to kind of, you know, focus on, you know, what the Warriors can do, and they're both so great with their mannerisms and things that they kind of grunt out and whatever. They're very entertaining, but I still felt like it needed a crowd. So you had that one, you know. Oh, what do you think of that one?
I just want to chime in real quick on that one.
Yeah.
We all thought that Kairi Sane looked like she wanted to be anywhere but there,
yeah,
especially during her entrance. Like, Asuka threw this whole thing, and Kairi Sane just looking at Asuka like, there's nobody here. What are we doing here?
Well, I mean,
and even if I'm married, it was like if Kairi Sane's literally going through the motions right now, so she get out.
Right. Well, and Asuka is so theatrical in what she does. I mean, I don't know if there's anybody in the business that understands their character better than she does. So you knew you were going to get everything 100% from her. To a certain extent, Kairi was a little bit of that, because it was kind of predictable to me that they were probably going to do the title switch, because, again, there's talk that Kairi may or may not be on the way out. Asuka to become a solo act again, put the belts on the other two where they'd had them before. It was a little bit of that, maybe, you know, a little bit of boo-boo face about doing the job. Sometimes that happens with wrestlers.
Maybe, I don't know. I mean, it just, like I said, her facial expressions coming out was just like, yeah, but even a Google face on the job, like, she wasn't even, like, going through the mannerisms. Like, she was just,
right,
like, doing the motions, but, like, yay. I just think it was one of those, I don't want to be here, I want to get the heck out of here, like,
yeah.
pointless.
I guess,
Why am I doing this?
on further reflection, I'm going to agree with you and somewhat disagree with my earlier point. I guess I was more thinking of Asuka when I was talking about their success in getting across their stuff in an empty arena. Yeah, Kairi, and it is kind of noticeable because she's generally very expressive. She's generally very good at getting across everything. So you're right. I think when I was putting them over collectively, I think I was mostly just thinking of the stuff that Asuka did, which she's always been portrayed as, well, the dominant member of the team anyways, as far as, you'll notice that when it was Asuka versus Becky and the build-up for that, it would always be Kairi eating the loss in singles matches. So some of that's the way that they've always sort of been portrayed. And that, again, I thought it was a pretty good match. The one that was pretty worthless in my estimation, as I expected it would be, the Baron Corbin-Elias match, seemingly put there just to troll us by giving Baron Corbin a spot on the card. So congratulations, you trolled us. You got my blood pressure up for having to watch that showed. The SmackDown tag team match, the ladder match, again, good luck trying to do the Money in the Bank stuff a month from now, because ladder matches to me, Jake, are the epitome of things that do not translate in an empty arena. It was decent, but at no point in time did it ever feel like a real quote-unquote ladder match to me. So, that was just a thing that completely fell out of place, I felt, stylistically.
So I completely ruined ladder matches for when we were watching it, and after we were watching it, I would climb the ladder to get stuff off the top shelf, but I'd climb it like a pro wrestler. Like, the pro wrestler climb. And she's like, just not watching it, she's like, this is so terrible because they were just running 2 seconds ago, yet they can't climb up a ladder. I'm like, yeah, it's awful.
Yeah.
And they're just doing this to fall down. It's like, it's the most, like,
Well, well, that's.
I don't know. It's just I'm over like the super spot fest. They're so. It's just I don't know. I just like the first time we saw it in 1999 or whatever when they did the triangle and they had the Hardy Boys and Edge and Christian, and then when they did the other ones later on, they peaked at like 2001.
Yeah.
Everything ever since then has just been you're just redoing that.
Yeah, it's derivative.
I don't know, just like. And especially one-on-one ladder matches, or in this case, triple threat one-on-one ladder matches.
Right.
If you're going to do a ladder match, you need to have like a cluster of guys to justify why they don't just get up. Like, in theory, a ladder match should be one guy kicks the other guy, climbs up and wins in 2 seconds.
Well, and everything that you said, and you're absolutely right about the stylistic problems with ladder matches to where it's almost a cliche, but it's certainly true. All of that, the devil's in the details, Jake. It doesn't have to be that way. You could cut down on the number of times in a match somebody climbs the ladder so as not to have to do that same thing repetitively. You could make sure that if somebody goes to climb the ladder, somebody's pretty close to him to interrupt him so he doesn't have to go like he's climbing through molasses to get up the ladder, because, nothing exposes the business more than that. So, I mean, just by doing it a little bit better.
They don't know how to reach when they get up there.
Yeah.
It's like they're in a video game and they're pressing A over and over again and they haven't got the ball.
How does my arm work? How do I get my arm to go over my head? I have forgotten it at the most inopportune moment.
And then the finish, what was that?
Like,
what?
Just because we haven't seen it before doesn't mean it's a good thing. That's the whole thing. I mean, sometimes.
So everybody wins?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, sometimes there's a reason we haven't seen things before, and that was it, basically. A match that was pretty good, because how could it not be with the two guys involved, but I still thought it was disappointing, was the Daniel Bryan-Sami Zayn match, and here's what I'm going to compare it to. I'm going to compare that to the CM Punk-Randy Orton match from WrestleMania 27. That was the match where they did it where, wasn't it that Orton was selling a leg injury the whole match, whatever, so it was just basically, it wasn't CM Punk versus Randy Orton the way you would normally think of it. It was Randy Orton working a hobbled gimmick. I'm like, why do I need to see this? This doesn't feel WrestleMania worthy. In this match, they've had Sami Zayn doing the whole chicken shit coward thing for so long that they're like, let's just have him do that. Let's have him wrestle like he's a manager, like he's Jim Cornette or J.J. Dillon or somebody like that, as opposed to going out there and being Sami Zayn. And that to me made it disappointing. It was a schmaz. It was pretty good. How can it not be good with those two? But I'm comparing it to what it could have been, and I'm feeling very disappointed watching it.
I was kind of like, I actually said the exact same thing while watching it. I was like, this could have been so good.
Yeah.
That guy won, and I wasn't like disappointed in it because of all the characters involved, except for the fact that this is one thing we brought up on our group chat, and they're sitting there watching it. So in a match, if Cesaro and Nakamura get hit, they get right back up and they're fine. But if they're outside interfering, they get hit by one Drew Gulak and they're dead for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, like that immediately I'm just like, you just took me out of this. Like if there was a reason that security threw them out or something, and you can know they just got punched in the face once in the head.
Exactly. There's a lot of it.
And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And that's when I kind of went, okay, we're getting a comedy match. And
Yeah.
I kind of was like, you know, I agree with everything you just said.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it for what it was, but it could have been so much better.
Yeah, I didn't really want to see those guys in a comedy match. You got a whole roster full of guys you can use for that, and both of those guys are good at comedy, but maybe sprinkle a little bit of comedy into a more serious match. I don't know. It felt like a waste. To say nothing of the fact that you couldn't even get Nakamura or Cesaro on the card. Cesaro did wrestle a pretty good pre-show match against Drew Gulak, albeit that was kind of a short one. Again, this whole thing, at least it's giving Drew Gulak the rub of being with Daniel Bryan. I like that. Gulak is a top-shelf guy as far as his ability as a worker and a personality, and so it's good to see that.